Xenoblade Chronicles was a critical and financial success despite being released at the tail end of the Wii's life cycle. Monolith Soft had finally struck gold, and their newfound triumph was only heightened by Shulk's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Takahashi and his team quickly got to work on creating a spiritual successor to Xenoblade Chronicles. That game would come out in April of 2015 in Japan. Yes, the one and only Xenoblade Chronicles X. Look, for the 10 Xenoblade X fans that are out there, that's a really clever joke if you think about it. I can't rag on the game at all when I haven't played it, but the fact it's on the Wii U isn't giving me much confidence in its quality. So yeah, X is not what we're here to talk about today. Instead, let's turn to the Nintendo Switch. It's here that we find the actual topic of discussion for this video, a proper sequel to the first game. December 1st, 2017 was the fateful day of release for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Hi! Hello. Welcome to the Matsunoki Cafe. I'm Shiro, the owner. Here I'd like to talk about video games, movies, or just whatever is considered nerdy or nostalgic that's on our minds. So whether you're new here or a returning customer, why don't you stick around and enjoy the conversation with your cup of joe. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a special game for me. It's the game that truly got me into Xenoblade. I liked it during my first playthrough, but I didn't consider it a 10 out of 10 game at the time. But my opinion changed when I played the Torna DLC upon its release, and then decided to go through New Game Plus of the base game. Don't ask me why I didn't do New Game Plus before Torna came out, I have no clue either. That second playthrough made me truly fall in love with this game. And then stop there. Years after it's come out, I keep finding new reasons to adore Xenoblade 2 and its story, whether they be small details sprinkled into dialogue or references to past Xeno games. This was a passion project for the development team and is spectacular in its own right. Although, you may not think that at first if you saw how divisive it was upon release. There were a lot of reasons it caught flack for a long while, most of which had to do with the fact it was following up the unanimously praised Xenoblade 1. Still though, despite some rough edges, there's a ton to love about the sequel. This video will go over every important aspect of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 as a whole. There will be spoilers in the second half of this video, and you'll be warned about it beforehand. To give context, the spoiler section includes any story or gameplay content after the end of Chapter 6. I will also bring up Torna the Golden Country throughout this video, talking about the changes it made to battles and general gameplay. Spoilers for Torna will be saved for the second half as well. Let's start with a pretty contentious topic, especially around the time this game came out: the gameplay. The first third of this game is a total slog to go through during an initial playthrough. You know how people complain about the 3-hour-long tutorial of Kingdom Hearts 2? Yeah, if anyone's still complaining about that, you can shut them up by showing them the tutorials from just the first 10 hours of Xenoblade 2. Now, everyone who's played this game already knows how bad the tutorials are. Hell, Chaga Conway made a whole video criticizing the tutorials and basically doing their job for them. But I'd be remiss to not bring it up here in this discussion piece. A big reason as to why tutorials get ragged on in Xenoblade 2 is not just because they're bad, but also because Xenoblade 1's tutorials did a way better job of teaching players fundamental mechanics. Xenoblade 1 understood they had to teach you to keep Dunban butt naked so you can dodge attacks like he was going Ultra Instinct. But the tutorials are only a small portion of the huge issue at hand here, and that's the awful UI. Let's say you want to swap out one of Rex's 3 blades out for a guy that has a different element. Maybe that different element works better for blade combos, who knows. So you open the main menu, and you click on characters, which brings you here. You select Rex, then pick the Engage Blades option that pops up. And now you have a list of all of Rex's blades, where you can finally swap your arsenal around. What is this rocket science you're trying to make me solve Xenoblade 2? Like, what is this? Imagine in the next Pokemon games, they removed the Pokemon option from the menu. That button is just gone. Instead, you have to go to the trainer ID, then you get the option to check your party from there. And in case you're wondering, no, the Blade section is not the equivalent of the Pokemon option, where it just cuts out the middleman. This blade subsection of the menu is for 3 things. 1. Check all the blades you've obtained up to this point, both rare and common. 2. Bond with core crystals you've collected to get new blades. And 3. An album where you can check out all the official artwork for all the special blades, which also lists their designer and voice actors. I used the comparison with Pokemon earlier because that's kind of what blades are. True to their name, blades are what give the 5 party members their weapons and arts. On top of that, every blade has an element attached to it. There are a total of 8 elements, each coming in pairings that contrast each other. Fire combats water, light is the opposite of dark, that sort of stuff. When it comes to unique blades, there's a big variety of weapon classes for all these elements. Plus, the legendary blades, the one-of-a-kinds you get through the story, each have their own special weapon exclusive to them. Except the water boys, they get normal weapons because who cares? Blades also come with an affinity chart to fill out. By filling out a blade's affinity chart, they obtain upgrades to their specials and field skills, as well as passive skills in battle, which can range from decent to holy shit, I am a god now! Now, for those who haven't played Xenoblade 2, you might be wondering how you get most of these unique blades. Well, it's through the gacha system I brought up earlier during my menu rant. Now, as bad as it sounds, it's not that kind of gacha system. You know, there's no method for you to pay real-world money to get core crystals because you don't need to. You can get core crystals from defeating enemies or just exploring the world and finding treasure. It doesn't change the pray to Jesus feeling every time you use up a core crystal and hope you get something good out of it. Not every rare blade is locked behind the gacha system. Some rare blades, like Wolfric, get unique core crystals which basically guarantee you get them, not some common schmuck named Bob. However, for the rare blades that are random, there are several ways you can increase their pull rate, such as the type of core crystal you use, boosters that increase the probability of getting a blade of a specific element, the driver's flux stat, and then there's pity groups. When you start a new game, your save file is put into a group that determines what set of pity blades the player gets. Basically, if you keep pulling common blades, the game will tally up points until it decides you deserve a freebie. The 3 rare blades you get out of pity depend on the group your save file was put in, and there are 5 groups. Problem is, they made an error in the code, so group 5 is never an option. Oh sorry, you wanted to get Ursula in the early game? A blade whose quest is notoriously time consuming and not worth the reward? Well, too bad, you get Godfrey. And sadly, blades bring along the worst aspect of exploration in this game, field skills. There are a multitude of areas and chests locked behind these field skill checks. It's annoying every time. Most field skill checks require you to have the blades with the needed skills equipped every time you want to use it. Only a few are a one-time deal. Thank the architect, they made it a million times better in 3. Now let's finally talk about the combat, and this is where the positives start flooding in. This game is so fun once you've gotten out of tutorial hell. Arts were given a big change in how they're handled. You can have up to 3 blades on one party member, with each blade providing 3 arts to use in combat. These arts are charged by auto-attacking enemies. By performing enough arts, you charge up a special meter, which can be used to deliver big attacks. The set of arts depends on the weapon class, while the specials are dependent on the specific blade. Those specials are important for blade combos. Remember those 8 elements I mentioned earlier? Buckle up because we're in for a wild ride. Blade combos divide into routes based on the element of the first special in the combo. So let's say you start off a combo with Pyro Special. The possible combat routes after doing so are listed in the corner of the screen over here. You could just go with 3 fires every time if you can pull it off, but it's heavily discouraged as each combo finisher comes with its own debuff or effect on the target enemy. Also, the enemy gains a slight resistance to the final element of the combo, so experimentation is good. But blade combos are only half the fun. Literally! There's also driver combos. If you played Xenoblade 1, then you know about the break and topple statuses to knock an enemy down. Well, here in 2, you can launch topple enemy, then use a smash art to bash them into the ground and do big damage. The trick is to do driver and blade combos in conjunction with one another. That way you can get fusion combo bonuses throughout the fight. These bonuses are increased attack power, lengthening the duration of combo stages, and filling the party gauge. The further you get into either type of combo, the bigger bonuses you get from pulling off fusions. And now we get to the point where it all comes together. Chain attacks. And I do prefer how 2 allows the player to extend chain attacks, but we'll talk about that in the Xenoblade 2 video. Yeah, we're addressing this now. You need your party gauge to be full in order to use a chain attack. If you manage to get an enemy's HP to 0 before that chain attack ends, you go into an overkill state where the extra damage you do is converted into bonus EXP. Also, when you do start a chain attack, you notice these elemental orbs are under the health bar of the enemy, which correspond to the floating orbs that have been circling around said enemy that you pull off more and more blade combos. What's up with that? Well, you see, this is where blade elements opposing each other comes into play. To go back to the fire out example, let's say I go fire all 3 stages of a combo. Now there's a fire orb on the enemy. Good thing Nia comes with a water blade, because now I can easily break that fire orb and continue the chain attack. Yes, you heard me. Breaking these orbs is what keeps the chain going. Every time you break an orb, you get another round. You want to stack as many orbs on an enemy as possible, which means going down different combo routes to not repeat the same elements for the finishers. Shattering the orbs will fill this golden meter that replaces the party gauge. Once you break enough orbs, congratulations, you just hit the full burst. That's where your party goes crazy on the enemy, hitting them with their level 4 specials at the same time. And then there's Torna the Golden Country, the expansion DLC that technically stands as its own game. The original idea was to have it be included as a playable section in the base game after Chapter 7 to fully show the events of the Aegis War, but it was cut out due to budgetary reasons, and since it was made as its own separate game, that means it came with enhancements to the original battle system. The biggest addition to battles is the Vanguard and Rearguard mechanic. Basically, you can have Driver and Blade swap places in battle, so the 3 teams you get results in you having 9 playable characters to choose from. And since you only get these 9, field skills are so much easier to deal with. Blade combos have also been changed a bit. Elemental orbs are put on an enemy with every stage of a blade combo, not just the finishers. You're also not restricted to what elements continue a combo. You can do random stuff like Fire 1, Ice 2, then Wind 3, and get results. But there are critical routes, which are essentially the combo routes for the base game. Doing these specific routes will do extra damage to the enemy. There's the community system, where you basically put people in your Twitter circle after completing their side quests. Problem is, you're forced to do side quests at multiple points in the journey to raise your community level. This was obviously done to pad out playtime in order to justify this being a standalone title. It's not bothersome to do, but it's still worth pointing out. The battle system in both Torna and the base game are legitimately fun. It's just a shame the exploration aspect is bogged down by infuriating decisions like field skills and just the general UI, which sucks because the world you explore is fantastic. Welcome to Allrest, where you sail on a sea of clouds. Similar to the Bionists and Mechanists from Xenoblade 1, the land masses of Allrest are these hulking beings called Titans. Almost every Titan doubles as its own nation, hosting entire civilizations of people and wildlife. In the Cloud Sea's center is the World Tree, rumored to hold the fabled land of Elysium, where humanity originally lived. It's made apparent from the very beginning that Titans are dying out, meaning the people of Allrest are fighting over the amount of land they have left before it's all eventually gone. A major narrative theme of Xenoblade 2 revolves around blades, a unique race compared to everything else found in Allrest. A blade is awoken from a core crystal when a person resonates with it. These people who are successful in resonating and awakening blades are called drivers. The thing about blades is that they're considered immortal when really it's a cycle of rebirth. Oh, wait a minute. When a driver dies, all the blades who have resonated with them revert back to their core crystals. By the time the crystal recharges and a new driver resonates with it, the blade has forgotten everything and essentially starts a whole new life. Particular blades like Brigid are lucky. Because of her status as Morardain's crown jewel, she'll always have access to a diary where past versions of her have written down their experiences and memories. This idea is already interesting enough on its own. The game does a good job examining the different kinds of relationships drivers and blades can form, especially through the main party. What if we were to alter the fundamental nature of that bond? Make it so blades weren't tied down by their human partners? That's where flesh eaters come in. These special blades with their red-tinted cores are fused with human cells, allowing them to achieve max power without the need of their driver beside them. Hell, some of them can obtain new levels of power through this transformation. However, the drawback all flesh eaters face is that the human cells cut them from the rebirth cycle. They'll just die instead of reverting to a core crystal. The philosophical question spawned from the existence of flesh eaters is thought-provoking to say the least. Would you take away any chance of a future life if it meant remembering the people you met and cherished and the one you have now? There's one more thing I want to mention with Blades, and that is the wide variety in character design. Besides the main cast of heroes, many different artists were brought on to design a few characters. Tetsuya Nomura of Kingdom Hearts fame was one of these artists, being the one to design all the members of the gang's antagonistic force Torna. However, The variety in artists can lead to characters looking too different from one another, like these two characters are from completely separate anime. I will say though, the dev team did a wonderful job translating all these designs into the character models. Cosmos has never looked better in 3D, that's all I'm saying. And the main cast has mostly good design. Looks of the main trio come off a bit silly when you first see them, but I can't deny their appearances have grown on me over time. Character designs definitely saw an improvement with Torna's release. Minoff looks super cool, Laura as cute as a button, and Adam looks pretty neat. Side note, Adam's face is never shown in the base game and is obscured by a hood. The actual reason he wore the hood was because his design wasn't finished until the Torna DLC came out. I will never not find that funny. Overall, I like the character designs and the variety, even if I have a few nitpicks. If you want a more detailed explanation about this, go look it up on YouTube. There are tons of videos about Xenoblade 2 character designs and We'd Be Hero, they've went into it, so let's just move on to the next topic. First up, the cutscenes. I think Xenoblade 2's cutscenes are visually a step up from the first game. The characters here are a lot more expressive, due in part to the change in art style, and the choreography is stunning. Pyra backflip! Woo! Pair the visual quality with the stellar music and you have a recipe for some amazing cutscenes. That visual quality is also granted to the titans you explore. The grassy plains of Torgoth look beautiful, and so does the winter wasteland that is Antal. From the glowing cherry blossoms of Araya to the dry climate of Moradin, the variety in areas to explore is amazing to witness during your first playthrough. Okay, I've been nice so far when talking about the game's presentation. That's because we're going into one of the weaker parts of this category, the voice acting. This game has some notoriously bad voice acting in the early segments. None of that is to blame on the voice actors themselves. They're all talented individuals and their performances get leagues better in the second half. The blame is to be put more on bad voice direction. Now, this isn't a problem with the Japanese audio, just the English audio. Also, Malice is definitely an exception. His voice acting was perfect from beginning to end. Indeed. Thank you, David Mencken. The shoddy voice acting is another reason Xenoblade 2 got all the flack it did when it first came out. After all, it was a follow-up to Xenoblade 1, a game that had great voice acting across the board. And while the voice acting does improve a lot the further you progress into the game, first impressions are important. I don't mind the voice acting at all anymore, though that may just be because I've grown accustomed to it now. Okay, that's basically all I really have to say about this game in a general sense. From here on out, we'll be talking about spoilers for all of Xenoblade 2, including Torna the Golden Country. So if you haven't played Xenoblade 2, or at least haven't played past Chapter 6, then flick off this video and go play it. If you stuck around this long, then I'm sure you will not regret playing this game and its DLC expansion. Also, quick warning, there will also be spoilers for Xenoblade 1, so click off if you haven't played that either. While Xenoblade 1 inarguably has great characters, it focused more on telling a great story. There's nothing against that, the first game's plot is amazing, but Xenoblade 2's story is certainly more character-driven, which I personally prefer. The party members contribute a lot to the plot and feel important the whole way through, instead of having their whole arc contained within one section like Persona 5. I like Persona 5, by the way, I'm just using it as an example. I think the best way to tackle this story discussion is to go over some of the major characters. As much as I'd like to go over all of them, this video would be insanely long if I did. I'm sorry, Morag, I love you, but I need to get this video out before the DLC. So I'm leaving it to some key characters plus some favorites of mine. If your favorite character from this game didn't make the cut, go into the comments and tell me why they're your fave. I'd love to hear what you have to say. I'll save Rex, Pyra, and Mithra for the end, so let's start with Nia. A lot of fans consider Nia to be Xenoblade 2's equivalent to Melia, and honestly that comparison became a lot more fitting as of recently. This Welsh catgirl is very sarcastic and witty, making her dynamics with the rest of the team very entertaining to watch, particularly her interactions with Zeke. Nia being a flesh eater is hinted at heavily before the big reveal. Her character arc is about self-acceptance and overcoming her insecurities. She hides that she's a flesh eater for most of the game out of the fear of being rejected and outcasted. It's that fear to use her flesh eater powers that costs the lives of several other characters at multiple points in the game. This all leads to the Spirit Crucible, where the player has to fight a whole army of Atom Ghosts. As the party is about to lose, she finally reveals her flesh eater form and powers to the rest of the team. And not only does this give them the upper hand to win, but Rex and the others fully accept her for who she is. It's a really sweet moment. Although, I will say, this piece of dialogue,
I love you and all you guys.
that line aged like fine fucking wine, let me tell you. Nia is a fan favorite not just within the cast of Xenoblade 2, but amongst characters from the whole franchise. Her conflict is relatable in a sense. Like, yeah, not everyone is a cat girl who can heal people with water magic, but everyone deals with insecurities, whether big or small. Her resolution to accept who she truly is, now that she's found a family with a team, is great storytelling. Plus, you actually get her as a Blade on Rex, and she's one of the best healer Blades in the whole game. Oh, fuck yeah! Zeke is my favorite character, and I'm about to go on a tirade to explain why. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Let's begin. Zeke is the exiled Crown Prince of Tantal and their strongest driver. And he really is the most powerful driver you get on the team. Half the weapon classes are best on him. He's a goofy dude who loves being over the top with his iconic titles and the names he gives to his attacks. A running gag is his terrible luck, which is why he has the lowest luck stat out of the 5 drivers. Although I and several other players pulled Cosmos, the rarest blade in the whole game, on Zeke, so is he really that unlucky? He's not just a big meathead though, he's actually intelligent and mature. There's that heart-to-heart he has with Morag and Letheria, which has always stuck with me. He talks about how a boy like Rex, who actively seeks to make others happy and support them, could only come from the islands. After all, if he were raised in Moradane instead, he would strive to become a soldier for the military. Zeke has been traveling all rest with nobody but Pandoria by his side for a decade by the time you meet him in game, and that really shaped his view on the world. Hell, he would have died in the middle of nowhere if Amalthus didn't find the prince and turn him into a Blade Eater. His comedic duo relationship with Pandy is honestly so cute to see when they finally join the party. I really like Pandy. She's a fun presence with a silly personality that's a bit more subdued compared to her driver. And I love the little detail that her glasses become clear after she and Zeke share their backstory. Zeke hides cynicism under his comedic antics. He left Tantal when he was 15 because he wanted to unite the nations and find a way to support his people. But after all the terrible things he's experienced, he lost hope. He started to think being a hero would be impossible to achieve. Until he met Rex. Rex's idealistic nature is what reignites Zeke's passion for heroism, and he joins the party to help the boy achieve his dreams every step of the way. And there you go, that's why the Zekeinator is my favorite character from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Now let's turn our attention to the antagonists of this game. Before we talk about Malos, we need to talk about his partner in crime, Jin. And to do that, we need to talk about Torna's story. If you played Torna after being the base game like I did, there's pretty much nothing to spoil with the DLC story. But I wouldn't say that's a bad thing. I would consider Torna to be the Xenoblade equivalent of Crisis Core. These prequels aren't meant to surprise people who have already played the game they're tied to. They're meant to enhance the original. Jin stands as the best example of that. His entire presence in the base game is greatly enhanced by the context Torna gives you. That scene where he reads a diary written by his previous self was already good initially, establishing why he despises the idea of losing his memory. But its extension in Torna gives more context for why he was afraid of forgetting Laura in particular. Her confessing how much he admires Jin is so adorable, and while he isn't one to outwardly express his emotions much, Jin obviously cherished that affection from his driver deeply. Torna makes you really care about Laura and her bond with Jin, which makes her death hit hard. It also adds to Haze's death, since Jin is killing the only other living remnant of Laura. You completely get why Jin turned into a nihilistic swordsman who refused to forget the woman he loved. You get why he hates the world and why he teamed up with Malos to kill the architect. You just understand him. But as sad as Torna's ending is, we know things do get better, even if only a little. It's through Rex that Jin moves past his hatred and regains some small hope in the world. His death at the end of chapter 9 hit me in the feels during my first playthrough, and it hit even harder the second time around. Legit, when I beat Amalthus at the World Tree in my first playthrough and watched that final set of cutscenes for the chapter, I spent a whole minute just holding back tears. This game got me to care about this Sephiroth ripoff, and I'm both so pissed and so happy about that. Then there's the Endbringer, Malos. He was born a pure evil individual hell-bent on oblivion. His ultimate goal is to reach the top of the World Tree so he can kill the architect and destroy everything. But there's more to Malos than that. Much more. He has a bit of an existential crisis going on, unsure if his will to destroy is truly his own, or something imprinted onto him by the architect or a Malthus. This dilemma is the focal point of discussion in a scene between Malus and the architect in chapter 10. When Malus threatens to wipe away Aures, Klaus welcomes him to do it if he believes that's his role. That's when Malus questions if his choice to wipe out Aures is really his choice. Klaus's response:
"It is a choice you made together."
There are several ways you can interpret this line. The one I go with is that while Malus' character was influenced by Malthus, since Malthus was his first driver, Malus is still his own person. The decisions he makes are ultimately his own. He has the free will to forge his own path in life. Malus also cares about Jin, seeing him as a blood brother of sorts. He realizes Jin's suffering was brought about partly by him. Malus sees himself as a hideous monster, and if someone like him can exist at all, is the world even worth salvaging? The best part about Malus and Jin as antagonists is that they're around and active from the very beginning. Most RPGs have their final bosses either be a big twist villain or only show up in the mid to late game. The only other example I can think of where the final boss is actively doing stuff in the early part of the game and is already known to be an antagonist is Sephiroth. And even then, you don't see what he looks like in the original Final Fantasy VII until you leave Midgar. To be honest, I think Xenoblade 2 has my favorite antagonists in video games, period. Malus, Jin, and I know I didn't touch on him, but also Malthus are amazing characters and super compelling to go up against. Oh yeah, I guess I should mention that Malus has a Monado? Yes, really, dude hit you with the Monado Cyclone. And this ties into the biggest twist of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The origins of the Architect and Aures are connected to the first game. It's spelled out during the final chapter that Aures was also a creation of Klaus's experiment. Klaus was split in two when he created a new universe. One half of him went on to rule that new universe as Zanza, but the other half of Klaus was left with the ruins of his original world and became the Architect. He sank the remains of the original Earth to the bottom of the ocean and formed the Cloud Sea to conceal it and create the first set of Titans. The remains of Earth are now known as the Land of Moritha. The monsters you find down there were the last survivors of the original humanity, but were mutated into what they are now through failed experiments with core crystals. The Land of Moritha is connected to the roots of the World Tree, which turns out to not be a tree at all. In actuality, it's a space elevator that leads up to the orbit station where Klaus performed his infamous experiment. As centuries passed, vegetation grew around the elevator until it took the exterior appearance of a gigantic tree. Rex and his team climb up the World Tree and eventually reach the orbit station, where they can finally achieve their goal of reaching Elysium. Yet, all they find is a dry, barren wasteland. This dreamy paradise, bright blue skies you were aiming for the whole time, it no longer existed. All that's left is an old temple that leads to the Architect. You meet him, and he tells the group about how he created Aures, and both he and his other half, Zanza, are destined to die soon. Yes, not only is this game connected to Xenoblade 1, both stories are taking place at the same time. So while you're fighting Malus piloting Ion, Shulk and his party are fighting Zanza. That moment where you hear Shulk,
"Today, we use our power to fell a god, and then seize our destiny."
So good! I want to return to an idea I brought up in my Xenoblade 1 video. The fear of being forgotten within that state of isolation drove Zanza mad, and it could drive anyone mad. The Architect Klaus is isolated in a similar way from his creations, more out of a sense of shame than anything. He floats around a room in a space station while everyone else is stuck on dying titans on the planet below. While Zanza became crazy, Klaus managed to maintain some sanity, and I think a part of why they differ is because Klaus was never forgotten by the people of Aures. They continued to refer to the Architect throughout time as their god, and the Architect used the memories of the Blades to see what was going on in the world while staying up in orbit. As Laura said to Jin, being forgotten is a much worse fate than death. Now that we've gone over all the other characters and plot twists of this game, it's finally time we talk about the main trio, Rex, Pyra, and Mithra. Rex got a lot of flack by the fan base, mostly due to comparisons between him and Shulk. And while I do love Shulk as a character, Rex is the better protagonist in my eyes. One fact that's important to understand about Rex at the beginning is that he's 15. He starts off as a typical, optimistic, and happy-go-lucky teenager. He's aware of how bad the world is and initially wants to reach Elysium to end conflict between the nations and save humanity as a whole. After meeting Pyra and Mithra, his motive changes from going to Elysium to achieve world peace to going there so he can bring the girls back to their home. Yes, it's obvious Rex has romantic feelings for them, but his motivation mainly comes from simply wanting to help them. But as the Aegis' driver, the power he wields starts to give him a big ego and make him feel like he's unstoppable. He ends up pushing Pyra to her limit a few times early on because all he thinks about during a fight is using her power to beat the bad guy. Rex's character arc is a coming-of-age story as he witnesses people around him die and suffer. As the game progresses, his big ego turns into a respectable level of confidence. He improves his skills as a driver, becomes more willing to make sacrifices, and listens to what other people have to say on matters. He doesn't have a drastic shift in personality, he maintains a jovial attitude with a sense of optimism. However, he's a bit more realistic with his attitude. When the situation gets tough, Rex takes it completely seriously. Chapter 7 is when Xenoblade 2 starts hitting its narrative and emotional highs. Rex's ego was shattered because he lost Pyra to Jin and Malos. He basically gives up and decides to go do his own thing. But after getting smacked by Nia, Bridget, and almost by Poppy, Rex gets the motivation to try saving his blade. The only lead they have is given to them by the King of Tantal, and that's the third Aegis sword. That scene between Rex and Adam at the end of the Spear Crucible is one of the most important moments of Rex's character, on top of being one of the best cutscenes in the game. Rex loves and cherishes everyone he's close to, and what he desires above all else is to see everyone he loves be happy. As Adam puts it himself,
"You are greedy, boy, but there is something granted to you especially, the power to accept her."
As it turns out, shortly after this scene, Pyra and Mithra's true reason for wanting to go reach Elysium is so they can meet the Architect and ask him to end their lives once and for all. Mithra wields similar levels of power as Malos, and is guilty over the ruin she caused 500 years ago during the Aegis War. Rex's ability to accept and carry Pyra and Mithra's fear is what makes him capable of using the Aegis' true power and awaken their ultimate form, Numa. Mithra is another great showcase of how Torna enhances the original game. When you see just how much destruction she caused in the final battle of Torna, can you blame her for being afraid of her own power? She wiped out multiple titans, meaning tons of people died, including Milton, a kid who was with her and Adam for a long time. She created Pyra as a separate, less powerful identity whose personality is basically what she sees as the perfect girl. I liked Pyra and Mithra by the end of my first playthrough, but playing this DLC made me love their characters. Back on Rex, his desire to see everyone happy is contested in the final chapter, where he is separated from all his friends and has to fight them in a nightmare world. After Rex fights and defeats his fellow drivers, he finds himself back in Fonset Village, where he's met with Pyra and Mithra, now in their own separate bodies. Rex is shown exactly what he wants, exactly what would make him happy. A peaceful life with the women he loves. But the problem is, he's the only one who's happy. And he can't help but break down into tears because that doesn't feel right to him. There's one more important part of Rex's character that I want to highlight, and that's his discussion with Jin during their final fight in Chapter 9. Jin questions Rex's conviction to have the people of Alrest live in Elysium, saying they'll ruin it just like they did the land of Mortha and the Tornan Titan. Even if Rex can keep it from happening in his lifetime, that outcome is seemingly inevitable. Rex's response? Humans themselves cease to exist upon their deaths. They can pass on their experiences and ideals to the next generation, just like how blades are passed down from one generation to the next. Humans and blades are meant to grow alongside each other and carry on one another's legacies. Rex, like most parts of the game, leave a great first impression. And that sucks, because I feel Rex is an amazing protagonist worthy to stand with the best protags in the genre. And that is everybody important enough to go over. Now let's finally get to the ending. After you defeat Malos for the last time, the Architect leaves a parting gift before dying. His death causes the Conduit, aka the Zohar, to disappear from the world. This also means the space station is set to fall on Alrest, which could wipe out the Titans and everyone living on them. Numa stays behind to operate Ion and destroy the station while it's in space. She separates herself from her core crystal and gives it to Rex. The team take an escape pod back to Allrest before Numa sacrifices herself to destroy the station. When the crew return to Allrest, Gramps grows back into his full Titan form and carries everyone on his back. That's when they see the parting gift the architect gave them. The Cloud Sea is gone, and the Titans are combining into one giant continent for everyone to share. And that this new land is the Elysium they were searching for since the start of the journey. After the credits, the Aegis core crystal recharges. Rex resonates with it and reawakens both Pyra and Mithra, but now they're separate. Pyra or Mithra says something that isn't heard by the player, and Rex steps up to the girls before it cuts to the chapter title card, and thus, boy met girl. Now, this mystery line has been discussed to hell and back over what they could have said. The interpretation I go with is, hello, I'm Pyra, or hello, I'm Mithra. They've forgotten their entire previous lives and are essentially new people. Not only does this fit with how Blade Awakenings work, but I think this would make Numa's sacrifice not feel pointless. Plus, it gives a bittersweet double meaning to the chapter's title. While it's unfortunate the women Rex loves don't remember the times they've shared already, they've also forgotten all the grief and suffering they went through and can start a new and better life with their driver. This story is one that tackles many ideas and topics. It's about growing up, letting go of the past, about identity, legacy, acceptance of others, about how people are shaped and changed by the bonds and experiences they make in life. But its biggest message is to do with hope. It's hard to see a light at the end of the tunnel. The world can be awful and unfair to most people, but there is a light, however small. You just need to keep running forward. Keep trying the best you can until you finally reach it. Even when it seems like all hope is lost, there could be someone or something out there that can help you regain optimism for the world and its future. Things can and will get better. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is the definition of don't judge a book by its cover. The character designs are hit and miss. The UI is trash. The voice acting is far from perfect, but the highs this game achieves more than make up for the lows. The battle system is so much fun. The story is fantastic and so emotionally compelling. Characters are amazing and so fun to watch interact. The OST has some of the best songs throughout the entire series, and that ending, You are a fan of RPGs at all, please do yourself a service and play this game! This game does, and forever will, hold a special place in my heart. Hell, I replayed a good portion of it while working on this video. One, because I wanted to fact check the gameplay part of the script, but also because I love this game! And I'm so happy that despite the amount of negative attention it got when it first released, it's garnered more and more positivity as the years go on. It's still my favorite game out of the trilogy. And making this video has cemented its place as my third favorite video game of all time. But who knows? Xenoblade 3 could overthrow its place depending on how the DLC expansion turns out. That DLC is coming out in less than a week at the time of me recording this. I made this whole video from start to finish in less than a week so I could get it out before Future Redeemed. I haven't slept in days, so please like, subscribe, and share this around. I really want this video to do well. Anyway, I plan on finishing off this little series with a proper discussion of Xenoblade 3 near the end of the year. Until then, thank you for visiting the cafe today. I hope to see you all again with the next video. Stay safe out there.